Planet's Ransom, Chapter 21. I Hate Caves. Taylor sat down opposite me and started pulling stuff from her pack. I barely registered it as I plotted out the day's walk and really wished there was a way to link up the personal comms without having to meet the person you wanted to link to. In the end, I tried a call to the Evanach HQ. Hey, computer guy, you there? Taylor made a sort of sputtering noise, and I knew she was laughing at me. I ignored her, looking up at the ceiling of the cave. Sisirva? I waited, but nothing came back to me, not even static. Ist? Still no response. I looked up when Taylor bumped my hands with something. A cup of warm something. Thanks, I said, taking it and wrapping my fingers around it. There was something comforting in being able to do that. Tea, Taylor explained. It's a reward for completing one of the levels. I remembered seeing garden beds as we'd headed into her pod and wondered just how far she'd gotten before the heritage had arrived and completely ruined it all. Tea, huh? I took a sip. Sugar, too, but not too much. It was as though Taylor hadn't wanted to disturb me while I'd been calling the base and just taken a guess. One sugar was pretty safe, not too sweet if I didn't take any additive, and just sweet enough if I did. I usually took one, though, so she was spot on. And? She wanted to know. It's 3 days, I said. Might as well get the bad news out of the way first. From her raised eyebrows, it wasn't the news she'd expected. Maybe I should have taken the one on the right, she muttered. I didn't ask, but I did access the map. Now that I was down in them, I had a partial overlay for the caves. A quick glance showed that Taylor had been right about taking the middle tunnel. Left, and we would have been heading back to her pod. Right would have taken us in a direction well away from Mitch's pod. I frowned, trying to pinpoint where the heritage base might be. Neither Sirva nor Yist had mentioned it, so I wasn't surprised to find it wasn't on the map in the visor. I tried something else. Please, just give me this, I whispered, and said, Sulin. At first, nothing changed, and then the map started scrolling on its own. Zoom out, I commanded, hoping this was something the visor had been programmed to understand. Yes! The map now showed a blue dot pulsing in an area equidistant between Blossom's pod and Taylor's. Blossom, I whispered, and a second dot appeared beside the first. You got them? Taylor asked, and I nodded. A sudden thought struck me. Mitch, I said, and the map scrolled again. A third blue dot appeared, and it wasn't where I'd expected it to be, or as far away. I sat and gaped at it for a couple of minutes before Taylor interrupted me. Drink your tea, she said. You can tell me what's gone wrong when you're done. I started, but Taylor interrupted. Drink your tea. It can wait until you're done. She hesitated. Just don't take forever about it because I don't think we should stay in one spot for too long, okay? I wanted to ask her why she'd said that, but I figured I'd only been told to hurry up and drink, so I took a sip from the cup. The tea was warm and tasted pretty much like I remembered it. Vaguely, I wondered where Taylor had found the milk. When I'd finished, I handed her the cup, figuring she'd want it back. You've got a map inside your visor, right? I said, and Taylor nodded. Well, just say Mitch, I said. I didn't want to tell her why. I wanted to see what happened. Mitch, Taylor said, and I watched her face as the visor did its thing. Holy cow, she said. He's the blue dot. And then before I could prompt her any more, she said Blossom, followed by Sulin, followed by home, in what sounded surprisingly like Evanach. Home? I could speak Evanach, but I hadn't said that. Taylor gave a sudden whoop. Gotcha, she said, and turned to me. Say it. Home, I repeated, using Evanach, and was surprised to see a green square filled in by a green cross appear on the screen. Like Taylor, I didn't need to be told what it was. Those sneaky sons of... I bet they didn't even think to hide the passphrase. We stared at each other for a moment. Wait, what's Evanach for heritage? I asked. Yeah, I can speak Evanach. Everyone who'd been taken onto their ship had been made to learn it, but I could only speak what I had to. I only hoped Taylor had been a bit less resistant. Heritage, Taylor said, and the word didn't sound anywhere near as sinister as I thought it should. Heritage. I repeated it and then said it again, adjusting my pronunciation slightly. The second attempt was more successful. A red square, crossed in red, appeared on the screen, about a half day's journey north of where the blue dots representing Blossom and Su Lin had appeared. Why's that? I wondered, but Taylor was already thinking ahead. Sierva, she said. East. I followed suit and understood why she suddenly stopped putting things back into her pack. 2 yellow dots appeared in the green square. We looked at each other. You found them, I said, and Taylor got busy packing again. I watched the tips of her ears turn red and wondered what was bothering her. That's a good thing, I said. What's the matter? I, nothing. Nothing's the matter, but we'd better move. She pulled the straps on her pack closed and stood up. Mitch is this way. I followed her movements as she slung her pack over her shoulders and headed back out into the tunnel. A few steps down, and Taylor turned into a side tunnel we'd passed earlier. We should reach him tomorrow, she said. You got any idea where we're going to camp tonight? I asked, but she shrugged. That's up to you, she said. Once we hit the surface, you lead. I lead. Okay. I couldn't work out exactly what was bothering her, but I figured I'd let it rest for a bit. I focused on trying to plot a course toward Mitch and then discovered I couldn't. He keeps moving, I said. Where to? Taylor asked. I watched Blue Dot Mitch for a bit longer and tried to work out where he might be headed. After a few moments, it was pretty obvious. Your place, I said, and Taylor laughed. You sure? She asked. Sure, I'm sure. I just can't figure out why. Truth was, I couldn't figure out why Mitch was heading for Taylor's place and not mine, but I wasn't about to tell Taylor that. Well, maybe he's doing what you're doing, only in reverse, Taylor suggested. He's a pretty logical guy. Maybe he figured out he'd buck the system and go find you. Now I was glad she was in front. That way she couldn't see me blushing. Then why isn't he heading for my pod? I'd meant it to come out sarcastic, but it came out showing a bit more feeling than I'd wanted it to. Ooh, you have got it bad, Taylor teased, stopping beside another cave opening. And so has he. He's coming to find you, but he's picking up everyone else on the way. Probably thinks it's in everyone's best interest if we all hook up. Hook up? I asked, and was rewarded with a look of sheer disgust. Not that kind of hook up. I meant get together, as in form one big group. Shh, some people. Only one thing on their minds. Hey! Yeah, you resemble that remark. I know. Now shut up. We're close to the surface. If I'd been paying attention, I would have been able to tell her that. Damn, this was going to take some getting used to. Either way, I shut and came up alongside her. Why are we stopping? And shutting up, Taylor added pointedly before peering around the corner into the cave. Because I thought I saw something move out there. Having been chased once by a giant centipede, I shut up. Taylor hesitated a little bit more, then backed up a step. I think there's some kind of beetle in there, she said. Is there another way out? She hesitated, and I glared at her. Not unless you want to come out and back at the pod. Ah, well, that wasn't going to work. Are you sure it's a beetle? I asked, wincing as my voice sent echoes down the tunnel. Maybe. Well, could it have been a centipede? No. Taylor's response was immediate, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Well, do you think it'll try to eat us? No, but some beetles are territorial. It might try to kill us or drive us away. Like that was so much better. So, what do you want to do? I'm not sure. Not sure? Haven't you seen one of these before? No. Look, why don't you see if you can make out what it is? We traded places, and I edged up to the opening and peered into the cave. At first, I couldn't see anything, and then I caught sight of a brief flash of movement. The sound of claws moving over rock made my insides fill with ice. I froze and listened, willing my visor to adjust to the dark. When it did, I almost wished it hadn't. The creature stalking through the tangled tree roots did, at first glance, look like a beetle. And then the visor image sharpened, and I saw that it was covered in large overlapping scales and had 4 clear wings that rested along its back. A tail almost half as long as its body looped behind it. But it wasn't until the creature leapt up onto a giant mushroom that I saw sections like webbing between a frog's toes expand beneath it. The tail acted like a sail or a rudder, or at the very least was used for balance. I watched as the sections folded flat against the base of the tail as soon as the creature landed. Balance. It stalked closer, sniffing the air as it came, and I knew we were in trouble. How far is that other exit? I asked, glancing back toward Taylor. Half a day. And the one closest? Across that cavern and up to the left. Have you got a weapon? No. Well then, there went that idea. I looked back into the cavern and my heart almost stopped. The creature was staring directly at the opening. I stared back. If it had been in daylight, I think our eyes would have met, but it wasn't. Even so, even in the pitch dark, I was pretty sure it could see me. Judging from the flare of its nostrils, I was pretty sure it could scent exactly where I was. I wondered what it ate. As if in answer to my ponderings, I heard the hurry-scurry of claws across stone. The creature turned about on its mushroom, the angle of its head giving me a fair idea of where the sound was coming from. The scurrying stopped. When it resumed again, it was accompanied by the clatter of small stones tumbling across the cave floor. With a susurration of sound, the winged creature sprang from the mushroom. I watched open-mouthed as it spread its wings and glided across the cavern. What's happening? Taylor asked, and I shushed him. Give it a minute, but I think whatever it is chasing something else. In the visor, the creature's wings gleamed faintly silver, and its scales were tinged with bronze and green. Thinking about it, I couldn't help being reminded of a large cat. A large, scaly, green cat. And then, with a flare of its wings, it spun right and around a corner, and I couldn't see it any more. Well? Asked Taylor's voice. That opening was to the right, right? Yeah. Well, I think that creature you saw just chased something down it. So? I think it's worth following it out. It's probably going to be too busy chasing whatever it was chasing to bother us. Right, let's go then. And before I could protest, Taylor had pushed past me and headed out across the cave. It could have gone bad. It could have gone very, very bad, but it didn't. Taylor took us across the cavern and around a curtain of stone that hid the tunnel out, and then up a narrow and very rocky tunnel to an opening curtained with green. Your turn, Taylor said, and stepped to one side so I could pass her. Chicken, I muttered, and she giggled. I glared at her and then studied the drapery of thornbush fronds and some new vine I'd never seen before. What's the vine? I asked. Torelli. It's not poisonous and it's supposed to grow some kind of fruit on it in summer. Taylor's voice softened with what might have been sadness. I was looking forward to trying it. You might still get the chance, I said, and turned my attention to trying to scope out what might lie beyond the green. There was no point in escaping from the heritage ship, just to walk out into something else just as dangerous. And I wanted to make sure that scaled cat thing wasn't lurking around outside. I peered cautiously through the fronds, carefully making a gap in the leaves that I could see through, and then scanning the area. Apart from being on the edge of another grove of trees, we seemed to be alone. I waited a bit longer, but nothing moved that I didn't expect to see. There were a couple of those birds that I'd planned on trapping and eating, and a couple of large flying insects that were more interested in the trees than us. It looked clear, so I pushed my way carefully through the vines and stepped out into the clearing between the vine-colored rocks and trees. I had been wrong. It wasn't a grove of trees, but the edge of a forest. At least Taylor and I would have cover from any heritage ships passing overhead. Come on, I said, holding the vines to one side. It's clear. Taylor followed me out into the open, and then, after a worried glance at the sky, hurried toward the edge of the trees. We both stopped when a shape moved through the shadows ahead of us. I was wondering when you'd get here,